For everyone's awareness, we have turned on the live stream.
Morning, everyone. We'll roll call in just a moment. Madam Clerk, is everything ready from your end?
Yes, I believe so. We're live streaming online and on YouTube.
Noted. Thank you. Just bear with me. Sharing from remote is a whole other level of complexity. Flying instruments. Okay, so let's take attendance starting with Councillor Essinger, who I can see on the screen. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Councillor Hamilton.
Good morning.
Morning. Councillor Henderson.
Good
morning.
Morning. Councillor Knack.
Good morning.
Morning. Councillor McKean. Still down for the count. Councillor Nicol.
Good morning.
Morning. Councillor Pitt.
Good morning.
Good morning. Councillor Walters.
Hey, everybody. Good morning.
Morning. Councillor Banga. Councillor Banga.
I believe Councillor Banga indicated he'll be a little bit late this morning.
And yes, he just texted me to remind me that he's on council business at the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association. So he'll join us as quick as he can as soon as this committee. Councillor Cartmel.
Good morning.
Morning. Councillor Caterina.
Good morning.
Morning. Councillor Zadok.
Still here.
Great. Well, that's enough to get started. Now, just a reminder, we've shifted to more or less completely virtual in light of the public health situation, out of an abundance of caution for occupational health and safety for our staff. And so that does represent a little bit of extra complexity. Please bear with us and with me as I pivot to doing this from remote. I am in City Hall in case I do need to connect to sign things and so on. There are still some manual portions of this. So I'll be working to liaise with the clerks to keep this moving as best as we can. And I just thank everyone, particularly the clerks, for their additional effort to pivot to this configuration, while still allowing us to carry on the important business of council. It would be lovely to take 2 weeks off, but that's really not an option for us. So without further ado, I'm just going to quickly make sure that we have the next folks online, and we've had one additional registration. John Lazarick will be speaker number 21 in opposition. So we have 8 speakers still to hear on the Crondale item. So I'm just going to ask each of you when I call you to quickly unmute and make sure that we can still hear you, and just make sure that you're here. Olivier Can.
I am present. Good morning.
Morning. Graydon McRae. Graydon McRae.
I don't believe they've checked in at this point, but we'll reach out to them.
Okay. Landon Pisarchuk.
Yes, I'm here. Good morning.
Morning. Rosemary Sieber.
I'm here, thanks.
Morning. Don Roos. Don Roos. Okay, not hearing Don Roos. Juanita Roos. No.
We can reach out to them as well.
Great. Andre Nikiforuk.
Good morning.
Good morning. And John Lazarick.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Good morning. So I'll just ask you each to mute yourselves again when you're not speaking, just to cut down on echo. And I will reiterate a friendly request to have a timer on for yourselves while you are speaking, and please observe the 5 minutes. As you can see, we have an awful lot of material to get through, and so I had a little difficulty enforcing that yesterday. I'm going to be a little fiercer today on that. So I will cut you off if you're running far beyond the 5 minutes. So thank you, just out of respect for everyone's time. And without further ado then, let's hear next from Olivier Kent.
Great. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. I was a little disappointed to be the first person not to speak yesterday, but grateful to be the first person speaking to a fresh audience this morning.
Thank you for coming back, and thank you all for coming back, and sorry for the carryover, but appreciate your flexibility. Go ahead.
So I'm speaking against the changes to the bylaws. And just to start off, maybe a little bit about me and why I'm in the Cromdale area. So I'm an owner and resident. My partner and I moved here a couple of years ago. We actually did an infill. And the reason we chose Cromdale was because of great access to amenities. There's sporting facilities, health facilities, green spaces, as everyone knows, public transit. There's this amazing Borden Park outdoor pool. We've got Virginia Park School. We've got the Concordia University nearby. So there's a lot of good reasons to be here in Cromdale. And in addition to that, it's really got a community feel. It's predominantly single detached housing, a lot of long-term residents, as we've already heard from, families, people who want to get to know their neighbors. So there were several reasons why we chose to be here, and we're very happy that we made that decision. So before I get into the reasons why I'm against the bylaw changes, I thought I should just kind of talk about the developer's presentation. So the developer talked about their intent to build a senior's home. That was one of the motivations for why they wanted 6 stories. So assuming that's what ends up happening, I guess the question is, well, it's already zoned for a low rise. So isn't 4 stories sufficient? Like, what is the justification for the 6 stories? Now, that aside, I guess there's still a question in terms of how committed is the developer to that proposal? So my understanding is no one has been informed that this was the developer's plan. Though I did hear Councillor Caterina say that he had heard of this proposal a few years back. So it's interesting to me that, by and large, this is news to everybody, but it sounds like the developer has been thinking about this for a while. And yet the presentation we saw showed no images of what a streetscape might look like, no architectural drawings, nothing. Nothing that would even provide a PR opportunity to give the community, to give council, to give everybody a real indication of what this development might look like. So with the time consideration, the land was purchased in 2007, you would expect there would have been some sort of thought about that aspect of the development. That aside, the nature of the developer, at least to me, is unclear. I'm not sure who the developer is. I was told it was a company called Ebenezer. I'm not sure if that's the case, but there's no indication of a website, no indication of previous developments in the city. So we've got basically an unknown developer proposing to build a seniors residence with no history of doing any construction in the city before. So that presentation is as interesting as it was. I'm just going to put that aside and really consider that as not having any weight in terms of whether the bylaw changes should or shouldn't be approved, and just take it on the merits of a direct change to an RF8 maximum 6 rise rezoning. I just want to quickly talk about the planner presentation. So they talked about why they were in favor of it, and what I got from that was an increase in density. Now we know that an increase in density is actually acceptable. We're prepared to go to an RA7 that's within the current zoning, maximum 4 stories. So it's not an increased density, it's like an increase on an increased density. And the question is why? What's the motivation? Is there a dearth of accommodation options? Well, the planner pointed out we've got the exhibition grounds, which are going to provide plenty of mid-range or mid-rise isn't justified by a need. It isn't justified by a community request. And so it's unclear to me in terms of, what need are we filling by going to extra density at that site? So the concerns that I have, putting those two sort of presentations now aside, are, talking about what my fellow community members have already brought up: parking concerns, potentially increase in petty crime, potential increase in traffic, sort of the bread and butter concerns of anyone who's looking at a density increase in their neighborhood. But the real key one for me is a change in character. So Cromdale, as I mentioned, has this community long-term residence kind of character. And by introducing a 6-story building, we are detracting from that. And there's no need. As I mentioned, there's plenty of mid-rise development around. It provides opportunities for people to move into this area and enjoy the features that I already mentioned. And unfortunately, I'm out of time, so I will bring it there to an end. But I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Kam? I'm not seeing any. Thank you for your comments. I note that Eugene Drapaka, who was not able to join us yesterday, is able to join us today. So I'm going to loop back to Mr. Drapaka. Are you there, sir?
I believe they are participating by phone and may need to star 6 on their keypad to unmute.
Mr. Drapaka, are you there? Okay, then let's.
Okay.
Are you there?
Oops. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. The floor is yours for 5 minutes.
I'm at the. I have my residence is right across from the proposed development, directly west, and I have some questions I would like to ask the council to ask the developer, and is why there is a for sale sign on the property advertising it as an RA8 site, and so is the applicant in relationship to the property a developer, or is he an owner, or what's the status as to who is the developer, who is the landowner, and it just seems to be there's sort of a red flag as the property's up for sale and there's some proposal, but it's still for sale, right? So the other is the applicant working with a company or a nonprofit to build the seniors' residence? If so, which one is it? And I don't have many more questions. I would just like to, I would like council to make a motion to send the application back for a technical study on the RA8 site, including traffic, parking, safety, and the impact of the shadowing and reduced privacy. I know I'm right across the street. It's going to be an impact. I've seen that site. I've been around there back and forth since 1971. So I know what the difference is how that whole area developed into the Borden Park and such a nice area, and to now put the start putting the bigger development centers in there. I'm not sure that's a great way, but I mean, I would just like to have some assurance that all the studies are going to be done properly. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Drapaka. Any questions on those comments? Not seeing any, then let's go next to Landon Pisarcik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors, for this opportunity to speak today. I would just like to reinforce some of the points made by my fellow neighbors in this area. This is not a community in transition. We are an established community that's been around for quite a long time. This RA7 to RA8 is not a moderate increase in the amount of residents that are going to be here. It's a substantial increase in this area. The Virginia Park Seniors Complex, which is already an established seniors park complex just a few blocks away from this proposed site, this area sees an increased amount of street parking due to the caregivers and visitors to the senior center. There are no 6-story buildings currently in the neighborhood. The condominium building referred to in Mr. Golightly and Mr. Katerina's presentation is 4 stories. The health center kitty corner is 2 stories. A 6-story building is completely out of character for this neighborhood. This rezoning change to RA8, which allows for a minimum density of 75 units, that's really what we're talking about today. We're not talking about a senior center of 62 units. We're talking about a rezoning change. So I would like people not to be fooled by this presentation of a senior center. The plan that was proposed calls for an ingress and egress off of 112th Avenue. This is a very busy road. As councillors have said, this is an arterial connection to downtown and eastern neighborhoods like Beverly and Rundle, which is where I was born and raised. I would like to ask, what is the expected impact to traffic on 112th flowing east if the ingress and egress is off of 112th Avenue? What's going to happen, in my opinion, is people are not going to be turning left out of that ingress and egress. They are going to be turning right. And they want to go west, but they have to go east first. So this is going to divert traffic down 112S Avenue. This is totally and directly in contradiction to the Cromdale Virginia Park ARP objectives, which section 2.2 of the residential land use says, 2.2.3 says, to preserve and protect the major portion of the existing stable residential neighborhoods from the intrusion of through traffic. By diverting traffic through 112S Avenue, it's not going to do that. This community has a lot of young children from the ages of 1 to 12. An increase of parking and traffic increases the risks to our children. So a question to council, what recourse do we have if the developer changes their mind? If this changes to a residential building, who's to say that this does not invite opportunity for slumlords such as Carmen Perez? What does City Council do? What are they willing to do in case of these slumlords that could be there, potentially be there, with this overworked police force that we have currently? The landowner has had this property since 2007 and could have developed it at any time over the past 14 years. Why now? The Cromdale sub area in which we live is the most impacted by the zoning change, is small, but we are trying to speak up. What do we have to do to make our voice heard? How much more? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Pisarcuk? Not seeing any. I'm wondering, Mr. Drapaka, if you could mute yourself again. Just we're picking up a little bit of background noise there. Now I understand that Graydon McRae has been able to join us now. Graydon, are you there?
I am indeed.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship and councillors. I was awake at 3 a.m. thinking about all of this, and that's probably going to be a good thing, because I decided in the middle of the night I'm going to completely rework my presentation. The result is shorter, and also it's very much less repetitive. But I was reminded myself that in the early 1980s, the city brought this whole community together. I live on the very extreme eastern edge of Cromdale on 76th Street. My home looks directly into the Virginia Park Seniors Complex, and Virginia Park as a community is across the road. In the early 80s, we were brought together by the city to review a plan
for the Virginia Park Seniors Complex. There used to be 8 seniors' cottages with little gardens. It was wonderful, but it didn't have the appropriate density, and they wanted something larger. What they first showed us was literally a box. And we were pretty disappointed, but didn't feel we could do much. Somebody at City Planning, we were later told, said, we can do better than this. And the result of that was they brought in a new architect. It was a Chinese gentleman, and he designed what we presently have, which is a vast improvement over what the original proposal was. The first thing that that architect did was he took a kind of aerial view of the whole site, and he put a circle around every tree. Every tree, and he built around them. I'm the only one left on the street that knows anything about this, but the trees are still there. The result is an attractive complex that has parking problems, yes, partly because there's a lot of staff and there's no staff parking. And in fairness, residents don't want to pay $40 or $50 a month, understandably, for a parking stall. But in any case, it's there, and it's an attractive building, and we can live with it. Yesterday, we heard there's been a petition signed by more than 200 people in this quite small community. That is everyone. It's an extraordinary development. I didn't even know about this proposal, this development proposal, until 10 days ago, because I fell outside the 20-meter catchment that the city used to advise people, even though it has significant impact on the entire community. So I didn't know about it until a neighbor came and knocked on my door on the weekend. What we see is a proposed 6-story box on land that has been residential since World War I. My house was built in 1913 on what was then Corral Street. That box will be right against single-family homes, smack against homes that people have restored and renovated over a period of many years. We need to find an elegant solution to this problem. We need to come up with something that we can all live with, including the developer. It may not be what anybody would be totally happy with, but we need to find something that we can all accept. I propose that the city hits pause on this development and that the community forms a small committee of volunteers. I'm speaking without having yet spoken with my neighbors, so I hope they will forgive me. A small group of volunteers, and we will work with the developer to find that elegant solution. The developer has had this land apparently since 2007, so the developer has 14 years of demonstrated patience. We need a little more. The result must be a complex that integrates rather than dominates. There is a solution out there. We just need to find it. In closing, I will just say that my ward is now going to be called Métis. So in closing, Your Worship and councillors, I will say thank you, merci, and hi hi.
Well, thank you, Mr. McRae, for that. Questions for Mr. McRae? Not seeing any. We're now going to hear from Rosemary Sieber.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and members of City Council. I own the property at 7727 112th Avenue South. I was a resident there from 1999 until 2008. We still own this property. We are still actually very active with the community that's there because we care about it. We imagine that we might actually end up back in that community because we liked the community so much. And so I'm quite disappointed actually in what has come about with this. So I'll start with the traffic, and apart from reiterating everything else that everyone else has already said in opposition to this project, one thing that hasn't been mentioned is the bottleneck that gets created on 79th Street at the intersection of 112th Avenue. At the very west end of 112th Avenue South, it had been closed off probably for about 20 years now to divert traffic from cutting through 112th Avenue South to get past the congestion that was going through to get access to Gretzky Drive. There are still people that still will drive into 80th Street to bypass some of that congestion. I noticed after a while, once the traffic lights were installed at that intersection of 79th Street and 112th Avenue, that we had people coming from Virginia Park and from Highlands that were driving west on 112th Avenue South just to get to those lights so that they could turn left because it was convenient to do so. I think that the increase of traffic is just going to exacerbate the congestion, especially for the residents who live directly on 79th Street with extra vehicles that are sitting there waiting to be turning at that light. The new development, whether it has parking or not, even if it's a small footprint, it will still create increased congestion, and it's something we're really trying to avoid. We know that it is unavoidable. We know that the growth is unavoidable, but we just want to mitigate that increased traffic. I also wanted to point out that this development with the developer saying that they wanted to put in the seniors residence, I have to admit, I do find somewhat disingenuous, and this is why. You have a community here that has been incredibly engaged. We really care about what happens in this community. I care, and I don't even live there anymore, even though I still do own the property that's there. And we have tried to contact the owner of the property. We have tried contacting Councillor Katarina. We have tried contacting the city to get more information about what this development is about. And no one seems to have had any information about it until last night when the developer put forward his proposal of a seniors residence. And the thing that bothers me about this is that I agree. I think that the wool is going to be pulled over our eyes with this. It looks like a nice thing right from the very start. But the truth is, once the land gets consolidated and changed to an RA8, we have no recourse and no control over what the developer ultimately decides to do with that property. And that's the part that actually really concerns me, because I find that this process has been not transparent, and it hasn't been fair, and it hasn't really been sincere by a developer that has chosen not to engage the community in any way, shape, or form with respect to how this land will get developed. Thank you very much for letting me speak. I hope that was very short. Have a good morning.
It was 3 minutes and 52 seconds. So thank you, Rosemary. Any questions for Rosemary? Not
No.
at this time? Okay. Your sound is great, though. You got a great setup there. Came through loud and clear.
I'm a musician. I have all the gear.
Nice. Okay. Was Don Roos able to join us?
Hi, this is Juanita Roos. Don Roos is here as well. I'll be speaking.
Okay. You'll each have 5 minutes if you want them. If it's just you, it's just 5 minutes. Understood?
It's just me. Okay.
Go ahead.
We have lived here at 7905 on 112 South Avenue, so we're at the end of the T there. We've been here for over 21 years, so we're definitely impacted by this proposed development. You're getting a sense of this community, as you've heard from every speaker, which has been fabulous. It's a vibrant, unique community and a pocket of historical homes that needs to be noted, and it's very close to the heart of our fine city. I do question the words I heard from our Councillor Katarina. He was painting a picture of a community where this 6-story mid-rise would blend into our neighborhood. This is completely at odds with the city's statement in the agenda on page 221, where it states the additional building mass allowed by an RA8 zone will produce additional impacts on surrounding properties in the form of a larger shadow, reduced privacy from overlook. It'll be felt most by properties to the south and southwest, where the transition between the existing detached single housing and a 6-story building would have the most impact. The lack of community consultation is extremely disappointing to all of us. Several residents definitely tried to contact Councillor Caterina's office to try to get support with questions as to what was driving this rezoning proposal. And he either did not respond or he stated he had been unaware of the interest in the property. So why did he not suggest the community involvement? The massive for sale signs that are posted on the vacant lot forever have clearly indicated that the lot is likely to be rezoned to RA8 in very bold lettering. I'd like the council to ask the developer, why were those signs posted on the property advertising it? And what is this applicant's relationship to this property? Is the applicant working with a company? Is it a nonprofit to build a seniors residence? If so, which one? Why has the developer not consulted at all with our community? Also, the question of the neighborhood in transition, I also completely disagree. As renovating our home over 20 years ago, there have been very few homes exchanged hands over this time. It's a very desirable neighborhood, it's a real mix of well-kept single-family homes. Of course, any residents that move in are often now younger families attracted by this sense of community and vibrancy in this narrow pocket. Our daughter herself has moved back to the community with her husband and 2 grandsons. They moved 5 doors to the east of this intersection and from us just last fall, and the street is always a buzz of neighborhood children playing on the street and on the sidewalk, riding bikes, on skateboards. They're out there almost every night. Our home is one house that we're just west of the T intersection. So I would say we're approximately less than 180 feet from the redevelopment site, proposed site. I can see it right here from my window. I'm sitting here now looking, and there are no visible hot mid-rises on our entire horizon as far as I can see, east or west. We can only slightly see the top of the 2-story health center, which is kitty corner to the proposed lot. I'm not sure what 6-story buildings Councillor Caterina is referring to, perhaps the ones on Stadium Road or Jasper Avenue, where obviously rental rates are quite high right now, higher than we've ever noticed, because building 6-story rises are not allowed right now. The 6-story building would tower over our community and take over the entire horizon of this community. Yes, there is an LRT station approximately 600 meters away. You can walk beyond 82nd Avenue, past those rental apartment buildings, past the newly developed Stadium Yards condominium community, which is also a mid-rise development. If you walk north of my home, past the Eastwood Health Clinic, and north of Borden Park, that's between us and the exhibition grounds, that's the proposed 200 acres of exhibition lands, the future development of the city's second largest urban infill site. The reference that there will be almost zero impact to our traffic and parking is unrealistic, obviously completely unrealistic. I'd like the council to ask the developer how on earth they would know that. The agenda itself explains that a traffic study may be required. I'd like to ask the council to make a motion to send the application back for a technical study on an RA8, including traffic, parking, safety, and the impact of shadow and reduced privacy. We are not opposed to this development, but please respect and protect this unique community and vote no to the proposed RA8 rezoning. No to any development taller than 4 stories. Council, I hope you are familiar with our neighborhood. If not, please take a look at the photos provided to see how just obscure this whole proposal is. You have heard from the residents loud and clear that this proposal is not beneficial to us, but could clearly be detrimental to the splendid community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Ruse? Not seeing any. Andre Nikiforuk, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Arvidsson and councillors, for the opportunity to speak today. I'll set my timer. It will go ding at the end. Hopefully I'll be finished before we hear the ding. My comments intend to follow an opening, some concerns that I have, community values, benefit of existing scale, increased densification and transit-oriented development. And then I will read a few, I think, key points from the city's residential infill policy and guidelines for mature neighborhoods. I live about a half a block away from the proposed development. First, I'll state that I'm opposed to the proposed bylaw and ARP amendments because the scale of the resulting development would significantly change the character of our neighborhood. I've lived at 7925 112 Avenue South since 1978. I've seen it grow into a lovely, revitalized, mature, interconnected, human-scale neighborhood. The majority of development has been for newer single-family housing that fits well with the character of this lovely neighborhood. And the existing zoning provides for low density apartments beside 112th Avenue and a transition across an existing laneway and through RF1 to the neighborhood. Both Councillor Katarina and Mr. Golightly spoke to integration with the community yesterday, as I recall, and I feel that their comments referred more to integration with the community north of 112th Avenue and the facilities available there than to our neighborhood, which is south of 112th Avenue. Doing some back of the envelope math, an increase from 4 to 6 stories would result in a 50% increase in height and in population as well. Mr. Golightly's proposal talks about a seniors complex, which I think makes a great deal of sense. However, it's the scale that's my main concern. So my concerns, I'm concerned that the zoning changes and resulting development would have negative impacts on our community. People have spoken to all of these. Parking congestion, street parking is already crowded. An addition of 15 to 20 vehicles parking on the street, which could result from visitors, residents, would impact that severely, similarly to the way football games used to before residential parking restrictions were in place in the neighborhood. Safety, there have been concerns expressed already. Ada Boulevard is really, or we are an extension of Ada Boulevard to a great extent. It's a recreational walking, biking, cycling corridor that runs all the way out to 112th Ave and 82nd Street through our neighborhood. It's a low-key, pleasant place for walking, cycling, and running. And lots of people use this area and benefit from it. Additional traffic that would likely result from this development would put pressure, infringe on safety, congestion exiting from the complex and using 112th Avenue, 112 Ave South to get out has already been spoken to, so I won't go into detail about that. There are also concerns about wintertime damage. The roadways get icy here. There's a bend in the road on 12 Avenue South, and people sliding through there have ended up in my front yard as well as others and damaged my vehicles and others. So my concern really is a disconnect between the structure of the proposed scale and the existing neighborhood. And I think the key element is how best do we integrate? Not opposed to development. There is existing zoning that allows for development and increased densification. And I think the best solution would be one where the development fits with that. Community values, benefit of the existing scale. The neighborhood's connected and interconnected by its love of the area and the nature of development. Neighbors know each other. The neighborhood's naturally bounded by 82nd Street and 112th Avenue. And the stadium ARP and the exhibition lands framework provide for increased densification in proximity to the transit of the LRT and the new LRT station that's proposed at 115th Avenue. Those two development areas should be more than sufficient to accommodate that kind of development. And again, it is the key character of our neighborhood that I think we need to think about. So I see that I'm running out of time, and I know that I'm speaking quickly. I'm going to go to the, I think, key points that I've identified from the transit orient, or not from TOD guidelines, which apply to 500 meters, but residential infill guidelines, which go beyond 400 meters. So city policy C551, general principles. Number 1, planning and design should contribute to a more environmentally sustainable city. Number 2, projects should contribute to the creation and maintenance of socially sustainable, mature neighborhoods. Number 4, critical mass of single-family housing should be protected in the area. Yes, I realize I'm running out of time, and I probably have more than a minute, so hold there. But I really encourage council to refer to the residential infill guidelines, and this is a large-scale proposal.
Thank you.
Medium density, and there are many of those that I could quote as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Nikiforuk? Not seeing any. Thank you for your comments, sir. Last but not least, in opposition on this item, John Lazarick.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, councillors and members of administration. Thank you for allowing me the time this morning. I will be brief in my comments. I'm sure my name might raise a few eyebrows there. I do work for the city. I've worked with several of the councillors and your executive assistants over the years. Having said that, I am a resident here and do have concerns with this proposal. First of all, early in the presentation, I believe it was the development officer said this is a community in transition. That is absolutely false, and I would put to council that whoever wrote this or said that, proposed it, has not spent 20 seconds in our community, and they have not done any research. On my street alone, we have a small business owner, a provincial planner, an engineer, a welding inspector, a lawyer, a PhD chemist, and a few retirees. More importantly, we all look out for each other. We all know each other. As Shauna said last night, we vacation together, we dine together, we walk together. This is not a community in transition. Also, administration had said this area should support an RA8 because it is a moderate increase. Adding 33% to a building is not a moderate increase. I don't know in what world that would be considered moderate. That is major. That is a major change to our community. The parking, everyone's gone over that. The developer yesterday said he doesn't expect the residents will use many cars or many of the parking stalls. That is pure speculation. He would have absolutely no idea how many stalls will be used. My mother-in-law is 79, my father-in-law is 82. They both drive. That is pure speculation. And parking here, again, has been mentioned before, is at a premium. And caregivers and visitors will be using it and will take up the street. Finally, I know this is going to sound a little bit harsh, but I don't for 1 second believe this developer has at best a 50% chance of using this for a seniors community. What are going to be the new COVID rules? Sadly, in this age, we have learned that senior centers are at risk. What is to stop them from saying, oh, it's too expensive, the COVID rules are too much, I can't afford this, I'm going to flip this lot. There's still, as Juanita brought up earlier, a large for sale sign. Again, I don't for 1 second believe, or at best 50% think he is going to use this to build a seniors home. There's been no community engagement, zero. Again, I was as shocked as anyone last night when this was brought up. As I say, I think this is a ruse for him to get the RA8 and then be able to sell it and profit. And why hasn't, I was not aware it was for sale since 2007. Why hasn't this been started yet? He could have built a 4-story building by now. This is strictly about profit and him being able to make more money and sell more units. I equated very similar to what the UCP government did earlier or last March when they did when they made the changes to the coal policy, not thinking people would do it and try and do it quietly. Well, this community has noticed, and we completely reject it. Again, no one's I don't think you have heard anybody that objects to a 4-story building, but a 6-story building in our community is unacceptable. Thank you very much. I respectfully ask that that council reject this proposal. And in my work, working with the city, one thing I always tell all my staff is that your job is to make the city more livable and safe. I'm not going to comment on the safe because we don't know the impact it will have. But putting a huge development like this or adding to this development does not make our community more livable in any way, shape, or form. Thank you very much, and open to any questions you might have.
Well, thank you, Mr. Lazarick, in your capacity as a citizen, but also thank you for your service to the city.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I will say, if you ever talk to Marilyn Hooper, please say hello for me.
I will, 100%. Absolutely. So we're pleased to hear from you. But without further ado, are there any questions for Mr. Lazarick? Not seeing any, then unless we've had any additional registrations to speak, I think we will turn now to questions of administration. Councillor Caterina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to everybody for their presentations. And this is from all sides to listen carefully to the concerns. So with administration, some of the questions that have been asked by the speakers today, can we start with someone speak to the shadow effect of this proposal?
Yes, Councillor Caterina, if we can get the slide put back up, please, and slide 12. We have a shadow impact at 3 o'clock at the spring equinox. And Council, this is a layout of the site. It's actually facing west. So at 3 o'clock on the March 21st, September 21st, you'll notice that all the shadow is actually to the park and the avenue, 112th Avenue, running east-west. So
Okay, thank you.
There is no impact on any of the residences.
Right. Okay, because of the location of the building that's being proposed. Have we had a TIA done, traffic impact assessment done on this building, or is it because it's a standard zone? Is that a requirement?
I'll leave that to Mr. Fasselsaid, but my understanding is no, because it's a standard zone. But we have reviewed it in terms of egress and access, and done a thorough analysis in terms of how traffic might work with this site.
Okay, if you'd like to speak to it.
Sure, Councillor. We did not ask for the TIA. However, we did look at and reviewed the traffic impacts internally. And just to bring in perspective, given the stated intent of the applicant is about 60 or so units, that translates into about 20-25 trips during the peak hours. And that does not take into account any trips made by transit, or walking, or biking. We did hear some concerns around safety in terms of looking at the collision data at the intersection of 79th Street and 112 Avenue. There has been 7 collisions in the last 5 years, and none of them include any pedestrian, and they were not severe in nature. In addition to that, the area is well served by transit. There's a bike lane, existing bike lane along 79th Street, with a potential for a district connector along 112 Avenue.
Thank you for that. Another concern that's come up is that notification. Anything in the notification process that was not fulfilled by administration?
Councillor Caterina, the standard is to go a 60-meter radius. In this case, we went 120 meters, so we doubled the requirements of Section 24.3 of the bylaw. There was also 3 signs on the site, so it was we feel it was well notified for anyone to know what was going on that site.
Okay, one of the concern was the directly to the south with the road closure there, but the increase in buffer. Mr. Ford, can you go through that? I understood 7.5 meters to the property line would be the setback on the south side of going to the next residential lot.
That's correct, Councillor. Under the RA8 zone, there is a 7.5 meter rear setback, and we're taking that the rear setback would be to the south. So that's correct. There's a 7.5 meter buffer, plus landscaping in that 7.5 meters as well.
And RA7, what would that be? This seems like an increase in the buffer.
The buffer is exactly both zones are exactly the same that way. The only difference between the two is there are 2 extra stories in the RA8 zone over the RA7.
Okay. Privacy concerns have been brought up. Mitigation for that, I would imagine, is in the development stage or development permit stage on rules that would require positioning of windows, balconies, that sort of thing. If someone could speak to that.
Correct. That would be taken up by the development officer at time of development permit, and they would hope to reduce the amount of overlook to the south. I don't think it would be entirely feasible, but I think they would certainly take that into consideration at time of permit.
Thank you. My time is up, Mr. Mayor. I'll come back. I'll come back around.
Sure. Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, I'm a bit puzzled by the communication piece. The fact that, clearly they're in this, maybe a question more for Mr. Golightly than us. But I'm, the fact that the seniors residence seems to caught everybody by surprise. There's certainly nothing in the report that suggests that. I understand that there's nothing, that's nothing that you can put into the zoning to guarantee that it's seniors, but we often, the intent of the applicant is often listed in the report. In those first paragraphs. So I just there seems, I sort of understand in some ways why this looked straight up, but there does seem to be a communication piece with the community in terms of what exactly was happening and how. And I just would like to hear a little bit more what we did in terms of communication, and then I probably would have the same question for Mr. Golightly.
Councillor, we review the zone as per the application. In this case, it did come in as an RA8. There was no, you are correct. Sometimes we get the applicant's intent. And if that's the case, we always mention that in the report. In this case, we didn't. But as you know, there's nothing we can put in the zone in terms of tenancy. And
no, I know we can't guarantee it. It just seems to me that there's a discussion with the community here that, and I understand COVID's been an impediment that way, but one way or the other, there seems to me a level of discussion that, in the past we would have had easily, but I think we found ways to do virtually. And I just get the feeling like we have that opportunity hasn't been created here in quite the way we would want. So that's why I wanted to get a sense of what discussion we have had with the community.
The planner responsible for this file has answered a lot of questions from the community and had no idea of the intent either, I don't think, up until yesterday.
Right, and so the ability to answer questions about the setbacks and all those kind of things, and the traffic and the shadowing, that was all part of the presentations that would have gone out virtually?
I believe so, yes. I'm not sure the shadowing would. We, given it's a standard zone, we wouldn't have.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and maybe this is a question to Mr. Golightly, because I'm not sure, I understand that, that your responses might not have changed much, but there does seem to be a gap in understanding here that might have helped a bit. So I just wanted to flag that. I'm puzzled by that because I've been through a number of these, in my own area. I know the level of discussion we've had. So I realize it can't always solve things, but great. Okay, I'll listen and maybe ask that same question to Mr. Golightly. Just as curiosity, Councillor, had you put up the shadow for the afternoon? I'm guessing there is a little bit of shadow on those houses along 82nd itself in the morning, correct?
We did have that as well. There is very little, actually. I think it just more or less touches the edge of their property.
Okay.
The 9 o'clock shadow.
Yeah. Okay. So, and there is a setback on the southern portion, but the houses across the street, it would be, there's no setback on that side. It really is just where we abut the single family homes, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Or step back rather. Is there a step back, or is it just it's a greater setback?
It's just a greater setback of 7.5 feet.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions before we light up a second round for Councillor Caterina? Councillor Henderson, could you move that second round?
Happy to.
I'll second it. I'll just seek unanimous consent. Any objections to a second round? Going once, going twice. Go ahead, Councillor Caterina.
Thank you. So continuing on, another concern has been the commercial part of this, and referred to as a strip mall, a small strip mall. Mr. Ford, can you speak to that on what is being asked for as far as the small commercial portion of this site?
Yes, Councillor. The zone itself does have a number of permitted uses, some general retail, convenience retail, some health services uses. They're really only limited to the ground floor, none above the ground floor. They're limited in size as well, so they would only have a maximum of 275 square meters. So it's pretty limited, and they're quite unusual as well to actually see them in these developments. but they are there should the opportunity arise. Something like this, you might expect some health services uses to complementary to what's in the neighborhood, maybe to serve some of the residents, but they are small in scale and ground floor only.
Thanks for that, and I agree with Councillor Henderson that the intended use of this, and I hope that during new information that Mr. Golightly will come forward and speak to what he's heard and the concerns, and to give us all some sort of assurance on length of time, for sale signage, all the concerns that have been raised by the residents around here, and give us some clear indication of what his intent is. So I'll make sure to ask him when the appropriate time comes forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're most welcome. Well, that will be very shortly, I think, at the rate we're going. So unless there are any other questions for administration at this time, seeing none, then I think...
May I ask a question?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Let me explain how this is going to work. You'll have an opportunity to make comments in a moment, ma'am. But the way this will work is we had emailed everybody to see if folks had new information arising from the public hearing, so that you could let the clerks know, and we would flag an opportunity for you to speak. So we'll note your interest in.
I don't wish to speak. I wish to ask a question about Ebenezer Developments.
I'm sorry, the system is set up in the Municipal Government Act to be structured as a hearing, and that doesn't necessarily allow for questions directed from citizens to applicants. However, the best way to accommodate your question will be to hear you under new information as one of the speakers, and then there is an opportunity for either the applicant to respond under new information to other questions that have arisen, but it's not a straight back and forth. It has to be mediated through this process, and that's defined by the Municipal Government Act. It is what it is. I am the traffic cop of that. So I will come to you, Ms. Bowerman, to hear what you want to raise. But before I do that, I'm going to go to Mr. Golightly, because Councillor Katarina had indicated he has questions under new information. But Mr. Golightly, did you want to, you have up to 5 minutes to offer new information before those questions.
Mr. Mayor, may I just ask, apologies, this is Ms. Gibson, the clerk here in Council Chamber. I just want to clarify for speakers, if you do wish to speak to new information, if you could email city.clerk@edmonton.ca as quickly as possible, we'll be compiling a list. So we only have a couple of people, and so I just wanted to make sure everyone was crystal clear on that ask.
Yeah, if you wish to speak to new information, raise anything, then please email the clerks to notify them that you would like to speak under new information. So just given the number of people we have, that's the best way for us to correlate the list. So thank you for that, Madam Clerk. Mr. Golightly, did you have new information?
Oh, I'm happy to answer any questions I can. I believe, Mr. Mayor, you indicated I had 5 minutes to speak.
Yes, under new information, you can address whatever's come up so far, and then there may be some further questions from Councillor Katarina.
Sure.
So, go ahead.
So I appreciate all the comments coming from the community, and certainly am empathetic to that. I've had a lot of experience developing seniors residents in the city, and these are valid and fair concerns. I'll just touch on a few. There's a variety of things that have come up. Parking seems to be one of them, and related to staff levels. This is a different kind of a model for seniors housing, with a high level of residents performing volunteer activity to operate the building. So we see very little staff in this building. The last discussion was approximately 4. So with respect to staff parking, or resident parking, we see that underground in the parkade, My experience, and it's fairly deep in seniors housing, is that typically seniors bring fewer cars. So do I know exactly how many cars they'll bring? No. But do I have experience to say that, that's the trend? Yes. With respects to crime that was brought up a few times by folks, especially last night, I've always been a proponent of eyes on the street. I think more activity in a community is better than less. It helps to keep everybody accountable. And this kind of group is very keen on having a safe environment to live, in which to live. With respect to the sign on the property, yes, there was a for sale sign on the property. It has been removed. The owner has contemplated, Ebenezer has contemplated a variety of options over the years. It's mentioned they've held the land for some time. More recently, have connected with a very experienced developer called MDM Construction, pardon me, and a very experienced seniors operator, an expert, which has now put together this plan for this type of a seniors development. So the question about why holding for so long and why now is finally the owner of this property has found the right people to work with to advance a progressive seniors operation. It's really quite advanced in terms of its thinking, and it's, in my opinion, and with my experience, it's very creative. This developer has a number of these projects under its belt. One is just going into occupancy right now in Stony Plain. Another one is about to start probably in the next half a year in Sherwood Park. A number of them in British Columbia as well. The question about, it was raised I think a few times, is there a nonprofit involved? Not at this point. That said, this group has worked a number of times with Three Robins, but I don't want to overstate that. The project hasn't advanced far enough yet to contemplate whether or not there'd be a direct involvement with a nonprofit. The spirit of this project is, we call it the missing 40%. It is to give folks who aren't in a position to spend $5,000 and $6,000 a month a place where they can have a safe, comfortable environment in which to thrive. And the Cromdale neighborhood is a fantastic neighborhood. We see this as something that they have the opportunity to integrate into that community. I think the last comment I'll make for now is the communication question. I think these are good questions. I think that there hasn't been enough communication with the community, except that as we were advancing this zoning application, I did have good communication with the planning department, and they did bring to my attention there were some objections raised, particularly the 6-story buildings, 6-story height, which I should address. That is simply a matter of getting enough people into this building to make it work. There is a threshold below which these types of developments don't work, and certainly as we move forward with the shadow of COVID, things have changed on how these operations are going to work. And that means there's going to be more space, more distance, fewer units than might have originally been able to develop in a conventional footprint. So it's a design. Going back to communication, though, I accept that there hasn't, certainly hearing the number of people that are opposed to this, there should be better communication. And most certainly, as this project goes forward, and the building designs, they're not even developed to any large degree yet, we would welcome as much input as possible. No question, COVID puts a restriction on that for the moment, but I think we can see the light at the end of that tunnel, and maybe we're going to have the opportunity to have community meetings and get input from the community on the proposal. I believe that's my comments for now, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Caterina, questions? Oh, you're muted, Tom. There we go.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, we'll get this cleared up, in that you are not the owner of this. Give me exactly what your involvement is in this project. What's your role in this project, and if you can expand on the ownership of this property. There's been questions on that, whether Ebenezer is the name of the corporation or whatever. Let's start with that.
Sure. So I was asked by this group, the Ebenezer Group, to help them to facilitate moving through this process. For those of you who know me, I've had quite a bit of experience with this, and I like to associate with projects that I see are going to benefit a community. I don't need to do this. This is something that I do because I truly believe in neighborhood revitalization and enhancement. So they've just called upon my expertise to help them move through the rezoning process. So Ebenezer is the owner. It's owned by a local family, and they have now partnered with this development group I spoke of earlier to move this project forward. I want to make sure I've answered your question, Councillor Katarina. Is that
okay? So you've stated that you've got quite a background or experience in this. I'm surprised that the communications to the community, that you miss that with all your experience and background. That's just an oddity that you wouldn't have brought all these details or intent forward at this point. So I don't know if I need an answer to that, but it just seems odd. But you stated that you're prepared to work with the community.
Absolutely.
Moving forward on this.
If I may, Councillor Katarina, there's no question that COVID has, in this last year, 14 months or so, has put a cramp on that, even knocking on doors. I'm not trying to use COVID as the only reason the communication hasn't been good enough. I hear you. I accept that.
Okay, thank you for that. The ownership isn't here with you, and the construction or company is not here with you either. That questions could be asked. Are you? Do you have any information on any of the technical requirements that need to be hurdles that need to be gone through at this point? You don't have a design yet, but you're at early stages at this point. I guess one question that I really need you to be honest with me, and I think with the community and with council, is this actually going to be built, or is this a rezoning for other purposes?
Sure, that's an entirely fair question. I spoke directly with the ownership group about a month or two ago about that, and they're fully committed to developing this project. And in fact, I said to them, "Well, what the heck have you got that sign on the property for?" That sign's been there for a long time, as many people mentioned, and I insisted they have that sign taken down because that sends a mixed message. So this ownership group has assured me that they're fully committed to going ahead with this project, and they are spending money on a variety of things now on the development side, which leads me to believe that they're serious.
All right. I think there are other questions now, and I'll listen to those questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome. Councillor Nicol.
Thank you very much, and it's good to see you again, Bard. I know your experience, and so when I ask these questions, I think you'll understand. So we have material requirements for engagement, and then we have the fiduciary, what would be, I would say, fiduciary obligations for engagement. To be quite honest, having this many speakers jump up on this project, one would begin to ask the question: Has those two metrics been met with regards to moving forward?
Councillor Nicol, as discussed earlier, there's no question. I think that given the number of people that are concerned about this, it tells us that there needed to be better communication. Now, that said, my understanding is that the city did communicate. I believe the boundary was expanded from 60 to 120 meters. In speaking, I was keeping track of this as it was going through the process, and speaking with the planning group, they were getting a few calls. Frankly, I was surprised at how many people object to this. No one likes change. I think that whatever gets done here needs to be done in a way that respects the community. But your central question was around communication, and I believe that there certainly has been communication coming from the city. The question is, should have there been more communication? Yeah, I think so, Councillor Nicol. That said, this is a very responsible group, and I believe that communication can continue as the building plans unfold.
Well, as you can appreciate, there are three parties here, right? There's your applicant, and there is the administration, and then there is the community.
Yep.
And you and I are both of the same opinion. This is quite the jump of concerned citizens. So yes, it strikes me, and a don't you think kind of fashion, that something is amiss.
I would, with all due respect, Councillor Nicol, I would suggest that I don't know how to define amiss. Not trying to pick on words.
Yeah, that's okay. That's my word. You don't have to use mine.
No, fair enough. What I'm getting at is we clearly see people. I think there's a number of things. We clearly see people have concerns about the project, but this is contemplated in the area plan. This is complementary to the vision for the community. This is a complement to the community. So, while we certainly heard a number of people, obviously, speaking in opposition to this, this does fit with the vision of where we want to go with this community. And frankly, it's a great place to put this kind of a development because, in my experience with seniors housing, there are very few, there really is a missing, it's an overused expression now, but there very, very, very much is a missing middle. There's a whole group of seniors that have nowhere to go. And most of that is quite frankly, is financial. And so this model will address that and in a respectful way to the community. So that I don't think is understood by the folks living in the community. What we're talking about here, though, is a rezoning application. It's a land use discussion, and that's all we're trying to get through right now. And then we move to design.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you.
Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, just to follow up on this a little bit, because I understand the hindsight's 2020 on this in terms of conversations that should have happened.
Yeah.
You started your presentation yesterday pointing out that this is land use, and all the stuff that you put on the table in terms of it being a seniors place wasn't really about land use. Nevertheless, you put it on the table. Yeah. And it strikes me we're in a position right now where because of that lack of communication, quite apart from the land use issue, that trust is not there with the community, which I think might be a huge help in this circumstance. So I want to put that to you. I know from previous things that I know you've worked on that this has not been the pattern, but it strikes me that something does need to get fixed here in terms of that trust, both in terms of who you're representing and in terms of what you're planning to do, which granted is not guaranteed by the RA zoning. But I'm wondering what your proposals will be at that point to fix what clearly is a complete lack of trust based on no communication whatsoever between you as a proponent and the community.
Councillor Henderson, I think that's a fair comment. When I stepped into this a few months ago, and it's become screamingly evident to me over the course of the last, 18 hours that there has not been enough communication with the community. Fair comment on my comments around land use vis-a-vis the intended use. Most certainly, my experience, and my recommendation to this owner group would be that we get out and have meaningful conversation with the community. COVID's a problem, but I think there's probably ways to do that, and do that before the design really gets advanced. There are a number of ways, and I appreciate your reference to my experience. There are a number of ways we can do this where it can mitigate the massing and impact on the neighborhood. And I heard a lot of people say they were surprised that it was a seniors development. I think I also heard a lot of people say that that's probably a good thing for this community. So my recommendation strongly to this owner group will be, let's get out there and start. I don't know if we can knock on doors yet. I don't think so, especially in light of the recent restrictions. But I think that there's no harm in almost doing a community workshop or something like that to get the feedback. I did hear that there are some people who are just simply opposed to this, period. And that's everybody has that right to that opinion. And I suspect some people will always object to this. And that, again, is their right. But I think better communication going forward really will help. We haven't even designed the building yet.
Can I talk a little bit, but if you're not asking for variances, there's no obligation whatsoever from this point on. If you talk about variances, then the community would have input, but I'm guessing you're not going to be looking at variances.
No, we're not.
So this is the point. Can you just talk me through a little bit, obviously this dates back 14 years, what the history is that brings us to this point? Because I think, without actually having the owners here to ask that question of, again, there's still, and I realize that's not a land use issue either, but it's a question I think has been raised by the community, understanding that history, how we got to this point, and therefore, how real this is, I think, is one of the concerns, which would be good to be able to respond to.
Sure, and that's fair. I don't have the 14 years history with these folks. My involvement is considerably more recent. That said, I am aware that they have struggled with what to do with this. They've had many different ideas on what to do with this site. They know it, it's right on 112. It's adjacent to all that commercial, the amenity rather. They finally have found their way through to a very experienced seniors developer, which is my connection to this. I know those folks quite well, and they asked me to come in and help them with this process. So I think it's just a matter of, as the old joke goes, and I'm not trying to make light of anything here, the stars finally started to align, and they found the right people to work with. Pardon me.
Okay, thanks. I'm basically out of time, so I will listen to the others.
Councillor Savick.
Thank you. To Mr. Golightly, you indicate that you've only worked with him for a short period of time and that you were brought on for this process of rezoning. But then you talk a lot about how you'll work with the community after the fact. And I get some of the concerns around COVID. But what I'm going to ask, I don't know if this is a valid land use question, so I can be stopped here, but do you have a contract to continue working with them? Because this seems sort of, the fact.
I'm not sure that's.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'll change that. After the zoning's done here, if it is passed, the development officer can issue permits for conforming proposals within that new zone. So, I'm failing to see why the engagement with the community would really start after this process with council. So if you could shed some light on that and why you're back-ending it versus front-ending that engagement.
Sure, no, that's a good question. The folks that if you think about this building, at this point we're proposing 62 units. We hope that a number of the folks living in these neighborhoods are going to be the people who want to live in this building. I have spent most of my career working in what might be considered infill neighborhoods. As most of you know, I spent a lot of time working with Christensen Developments, and you think about many of those developments, you think of Railtown and Hazeldean and all of these, they're all infill. The folks living in those neighborhoods are existing neighborhoods, pardon me, with infill. Well, those neighborhoods many of those folks living are looking for an alternative. They're looking for a place to live. It is in the best interest of this project to go out and
I'm just saying that this is likely the one check-in with council, and you're promising a lot of engagement after this stage.
I think it makes sense. That's where, to be really blunt, that will be where some of the residents will come from. I hear you. There's no legal obligation to do that consultation. My instinct, though, and my habit of doing business is to get out and talk to people, and this should have been done sooner. I accept that, but there is good motivation to continue to do it.
Well, yeah, it sounds like most of the engagement is just occurring during this public hearing. It doesn't have to be that way. But let me ask you about the for sale sign that we're hearing about. So you're saying that you think optically it would have been better if that was down. Can I ask, is the property for sale right now, is it listed with any agent?
No, the sign's down, and the property is one of the partners in this project is a realtor, and it was his sign that was up, but the sign has come down, and the intent is to develop this property, full stop. That's what this group wants to do.
Okay, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. We can ask lots more questions, but I gather there is a motion coming. So, Councillor Knack?
I just had one question, which is what is the harm of referring it versus doing the engagement now before we approve it versus sending it to doing your engagement afterwards?
Councillor Knack, are you directing that question to me?
Yes. Yeah.
I will go back to my comment earlier, Councillor. This is a land use question. The proponent would need this land use to make this project work. If the land use isn't in place, the project doesn't work. Really, the reason I volunteered in the spirit of being transparent, the reason I volunteered what the project is intended to be is to help inform what this is about. That said, we have a land use discussion today, and then we have what I might characterize as a commercial use going forward. So I think it's a multi-step process, and if the land use doesn't happen, then the ownership group has to go back and say, okay, what do we do now? Because the project's
okay. They're not necessarily interested in doing the engagement if this was sent back, because that could change things. That's what I'm hearing.
It would go back to a 4-story building, which doesn't work. And so, can a new plan be developed? I don't think this kind of a project would work. I mean, the site's too small. I mean, we're only talking about 62 units as it is. You cut it back to 4 stories. It's probably not going to work. So then what do we do? So we'd have to really rethink what we do. I sincerely believe this kind of a development in this neighborhood would enhance this neighborhood and this community.
Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Caterina?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if it's appropriate at this time, I'm going to move that bylaw 19685, 86, and 87 be referred back to administration to conduct additional engagement with the community and return to a future city council public hearing. And I think that everybody's agreed.
I second that.
Councillor Henderson seconds. Okay.
Thank
I
you.
think I Council Henderson on that, Mr. Mayor.
If you insist, Councillor
Thank
Caterina.
you.
What does it matter?
Councillor Caterina, carry on.
I'm
Okay, you said
not sure what. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, it is a matter of great and urgent concern who the seconder is for your motion, and Councillor Nichols insisted it was him. So I've given him that, and you may carry on and introduce the motion.
Okay, no concern to me, but I think that we've seen here now that there was a big step that was dropped in all this, and for whatever reason it was, and because the intent now has been stated at sort of the last minute, you've put it on the table, and that now is a legitimate reason for community involvement in what your proposal is. If there was no intent stated, then it would be strictly land use, but that has changed. So I think that the best course is that not just administration to conduct further engagement with community, but for yourself, Brad, for your ownership group and anybody else involved, that they take that step very, very seriously, and that we get to reapplication if that's the will of your ownership group or not. But that step with community engagement has to be done, and has to be done meaningfully. And I think that that's the best course of action at this point in time.
Thank you. So referral is on the floor before us, moved by Councillor Caterina and seconded by Councillor Nichols. Councillor Henderson, you have questions? Go ahead.
No, I'll speak to it if I can.
Pardon me then. Councillor Knack, are you to speak?
Speaking to it.
Anybody have questions on the referral motion? Not seeing it. Councillor Henderson, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, understanding there's a nuance here around land use versus, but I do think there's a process question here that's important. This is a process that would have been mandated if this was a direct control. But this has, I think, in this neighborhood, some of the same impacts in terms of change of scale as a direct control might. And we don't ask for it in traditional zoning, but I think it would have addressed this question of making sure that the applicant and the community had some ability to communicate with each other. And I think having said that, though, I do think it's important to telegraph from where I'm sitting that given some of the other kind of RA7 to RA8 that we have approved in the past, much more embedded within communities, that from a land use point of view, doing it outside on the edge, on the surface makes sense to me. And I think that's important to say before going back, that I'm not sending it back because I think it's necessarily totally out of the question we should be doing this, and this is necessarily a negotiation about the number of floors. But I do think there's real value in a conversation happening here between the community and the applicant that may actually help get some commitments that will help the community's concerns. And I think that's a really important part of this process that clearly has not happened in this case. So I'm not sending this back from a land use point of view so much as a process point of view. And I think that's a legitimate, I suppose I should ask Mr. Johnson if that's a legitimate choice, but in my eyes, I think there's an important step here that is part of what helps build trust. And trust is important as we move forward with these kind of changes in this city. And it's something I felt very strongly for years. And for that reason, I think there is some real value here in making sure this conversation happens with the community now, because there is no way we can mandate it later. This is our only ability to do so. And I'll support this referral for that reason.
Thank you. Councillor Knack.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I very much want to echo almost everything Councillor Henderson said. Very much to the community, referring this back is not because I think that the built form is the wrong built form. But I do think the process is very important. And I just wanted to give one example. So instead of repeating almost everything Councillor Henderson said, and because I'm in agreement, I do just want to give one example. I think it was during our first term And I think back to Greater Edmonton Foundation on their site, right, which is on a major roadway again. And what they did in advance of coming forward to the rezoning application was thorough engagement with the community. They really worked well with them. In fact, because they brought them along, not only was nobody in attendance at the public hearing for what was approved, and I think we approved it as a 6-story building, an RA8, if I recall that zoning correctly, on an arterial road. So it made the built form makes a lot of sense, but because they brought the community along, many of the community members were not only not in opposition, they were ecstatic about it because that was going to give them an opportunity to move into this building that was now going to be built on the edge of their community. So similar to Councillor Henderson, I think this is an important part of the process, and it was missed. And while I think the built form will likely be appropriate once that's all said and done, my hope is that there's proper engagement to help make sure the community is as supportive as we've seen in other areas. So I'll support the referral motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm trying to click in here. Councillor Nicol, can you take the chair?
I have the chair, sir.
Thank you. So I'm just a couple of comments because I do agree in general with the comments just made about the need to have open conversations. But I also need to be, and I will support referral to allow that to happen. But I do think that we need to be realistic about expectations and what is actually required in the process, and by way of notification, by way of engagement, when we're talking about conventional zones. And this council has worked very hard, and our administration has worked very hard to update conventional zones based on all the work that we've done and the things that we've learned about DC to direct control by direct control by direct control, which is an onerous way for everybody to try to get certainty, which is the trade-off against the complexity and the cost and the time. And so I do think we need to be a bit cautious when we are looking at conventional zoning like this, that if we refer it thinking there's going to be some give and take or some negotiation or any more certainty than the zone confers in black letter, then we may be creating expectations that the zoning can't fulfill. And I just want to very strongly caution council about that, because there is no way around that unless the referral says do a DC. But we have done all this work so that we have conventional zones that we can stand behind, provided we think it's the right conventional zone. So I'll support this because I do think a conversation needs to happen. I am going to suggest that we define the time for that so that there isn't a re-advertising cost either for the city or for the applicant. And so that this does not sprawl into, ironically, into timing uncertainty for anybody. And so I guess a quick question then to the clerks and or Mr. Johnson, first maybe a question to the mover about timing. Would it be friendly to you if we put a defined time on this?
That was going to be a suggestion as well, that we need to have that timing date in place, and certainly Mr. Johnson for the re-advertising necessary and not necessary, what the time frame should be.
Yeah, so to Mr. Johnson, your advice?
Yeah, Councillor and the Mayor, if you will put it to a specific public hearing in the future, then you would not need to re-advertise it unless they change the zoning or bring some other application, of course.
Right. Okay. And what's the, if the same application comes back as RA8, then that would require re-advertising. So then to the clerks, is there a date we can put on this?
I would suggest the August 31st public hearing.
Okay. Well, I will suggest that as an amendment. It's probably friendly.
It is, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Well, I'll take the chair back.
I'll return the chair.
and if we can make that friendly adjustment to include the August 31st timeline for coming back. And next then is Councillor Zadick to speak to referral.
Yeah, to speak to it, I don't think I'm going to support this because I wanted to make a decision on the proposal today, and I was leaning towards not supporting the proposal. But now we have a referral, and my concern is there's little that can be done with the RA8 zone that would be a commitment from the developer to the community after approval is received by council. Or if it comes back as a completely other type of zone, then to me, a new application should be started. I get if it's the will of this council for referral, that's fine. But I think that we need to receive properly packaged applications where a reasonable amount of due diligence is done in advance. It's clear to me that the community is against the current proposal. And I think if the developer would have surveyed the community surrounding it prior to coming here, that would have been revealed to us, and we wouldn't have worked till 10 p.m. last night and started pretty much at 9 a.m. this morning. I don't think it's the job of this council to always be the body in the middle that's trying to mend this. We have an expectation that developers are going to bring stuff forward in the out of respect for our time, but also out of respect for the community's time. If we, in a somewhat complete fashion, if we refer this, the community is going to think that they're going to be listened to. But if they come back with another standard zone, which ironically is something that we want typically, there's going to be no strong commitments in it because they just won't be allowed to do that. And if this is sold to any other landowner, any other developer, there, of course, those commitments would be completely out the window at that point. So for those reasons, and I know there's a little bit of speculation on my part there, and I always encourage better conversations and more conversations between the community and the developers. I just think the time for that has passed, and I don't think it's up to this council to make that happen. We should have a higher standard of expectations for what comes before us. So I'm not going to support referral, and if it fails, well, then I'm ready, and I'd be happy to make a decision on the current application before us today. And if that were to fail, then I would encourage the developer then to come back to the community with a different concept altogether. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Caterina to close on referral.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this has been challenging, and the fact that it is a standard zone, I think the site is appropriate for the proposal before us. And both Councillor Henderson and yourself, Mr. Mayor, have stated the amount of work that's gone into reestablishing that standard zone versus DC's that's made it extremely onerous. But with this development coming forward, where there has been that misstep in communicating, and they have stated their intent, and this to me reminds me of the crematorium in Prince Rupert. Without the stated intent, it might have had a different lens on it, but the intent was stated, and everything is fair now to get explanation on what the intended purpose is going to be. The land use, I think that this is very appropriate for land use decision on this, so that's not my concern at this point. But the developer has, or developer people have stated that they missed that step as well too. They're prepared to do it, and the community certainly wants to have this happen. I think that this is appropriate. The timing of it to August 31st, I think is what I hope is enough time for both sides to take this opportunity and hopefully come to some sort of agreement at this point. So I think it's appropriate that we give both sides a chance to fix or remedy that communication misstep, and we'll move forward from there. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Caterina. Please vote on referral.
I'm a yes, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton.
I'm a yes too, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Councillor Walters.
Display the vote.
Sorry, we're just missing Councillor Katarina.
I think he's a yes.
Yes, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. And Councillor Paquette.
Yes.
Thank you. And we have 11 votes.
Display the vote, please. That's carried 10-1. Okay. That is the Cromdale item. Before we go to the Big Lake item, let's do some agenda management. Madam Clerk, what we've worked out is that, as I mentioned yesterday, we can, council can cancel the Community and Public Services Committee meeting for next Friday outright and postpone the one item that was on that agenda off to a subsequent meeting, and thereby freeing up the morning as well as the afternoon. And this will give us the opportunity to take the 3 large items and put them into different time blocks. So we'd be able to do Holyrood Tuesday afternoon and the Garneau items on Friday, and potentially each of them in a dedicated slot to make it easier for citizens to engage and plan their time, and clerks to manage the panels, quite frankly. So I think clerks have done a great job figuring this out. Very grateful. Ms. Gibson, do you have a motion that accomplishes what I have just described?
Yes, we can display it if you'd like.
Yes. And I think Councillor Henderson's chomping at the bit to do that for particularly Garneau. Well, all of them are his, actually. So Garneau and Holyrood residents benefit. You want to make that motion, Councillor Henderson?
Yeah, happy to.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Essinger. Any debate?
Mr. Mayor, if I may just clarify, Part 4 has the 2 Garneau items as first and second items. I'm not sure if you want to make it more time specific than that.
Yeah, so the risk is if we split them up, one to be 9:30, one to be 1:30, and we don't finish the 9:30 one, then we have to come back to it after the 1:30 one. But I'd leave it to Councillor Henderson to his judgment if he would like to split them or reverse the order if one's going to be shorter than the other, one for the morning, one for the afternoon.
I think we should. I don't know. My gut feeling is the first one will be shorter. I could be wrong. And there is some overlap in the speakers. There's more overlap that way than the other way. So there's more people speaking to the second item that are not speaking to the first than the other way around. So I think let's leave it open so that I would hate to run out of time on the second item because we had to give back time from the first one.
Got it. Okay. So it'll be first and second item and they'll flow rather than broken into 9:30 and 1:30. Okay, if that works for you as councillor, for those folks, then I think the motion in the form before us reflects that. So are there any questions on this? Okay, since this one cancels meetings and such, let's make it a proper vote rather than just unanimous consent. Please vote. And with thanks again to Councillor Paquette for agreeing to shuffle his agenda at the committee.
Anything for the cause.
We are all in this together, I think.
And we're just missing a couple of votes. Councillor Zadek?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton?
I mean, yeah.
Yes.
And
yes from Walters.
Thank you, Councillor Walters. And Councillor Katarina?
Yes for me as well.
Thanks very much. We have 11 votes.
That's carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Okay, let's get the Henday presentation if we're ready to go on that.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, members of council, can you hear me first off?
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you. So Charter Bylaw 19645 proposes to amend the zoning bylaw from AG, agricultural zone, to IM, medium industrial zone. The applicant's stated intent is to operate a traffic safety supply, rentals, and sales business. The vacant 0.81 hectare site is located north of Anthony Henday Drive east of Ray Gibbon Drive and south of 137th Avenue. Access to the site is only available from 137th Avenue at Ray Gibbon Drive. Land to the west is Crown land and serves as storm retention ponds for the Anthony Henday intersection. North of 137, the north side of 137th Avenue is the city's boundary with St. Albert, and St. Albert's undeveloped South Riel ASP is north of 137th Avenue. We can move on to slide 2, please. There we go. Where are we? There is no plan in effect for this area. And given the small size of the isolated site, which includes the undeveloped area to the east, that is also part of the City of Edmonton, preparation of a plan for the development of these areas would be costly and impractical. Servicing the area to an urban standard would be a challenge, as the City of Edmonton servicing would have to come up from the south side of the transportation utility corridor. The proposed IM zone is compatible with the DC2 provision on the property to the east. The DC2 allows for a range of general industrial and automotive and minor recreation vehicle sales rentals with enhanced landscaping required along Anthony Henday. To the north, land in St. Albert is designated for industrial development as part of the South Riel Area Structure Plan. Given the proximity to St. Albert, they were circulated and have provided the following. The revised notice of intent to annex was submitted to the Municipal Government Board and the City of Edmonton on March 2021, or in March 2021. As outlined within the reasons for the annexation, both St. Albert and Edmonton agree that these parcels are a better fit within St. Albert's boundaries for future servicing and access. Their formal application to the board is pending. The proposed IM zone is compatible with proposed land uses to the north. They have concerns regarding the future development of these lands without a statutory planning documents in place. And should annexation be completed, St. Albert would incorporate the subject site into the South Riel ASP, and unplanned development will impact St. Albert's ability to effectively plan the annexation area. In the context of the current St. Albert-led annexation process for this land, administration's opinion is that this land development application is premature. The annexation process is currently underway, with the City of St. Albert currently undertaking public consultation on the application. Through circulation, the following has been flagged. Access to the site is currently available off 137th Avenue, only via Ray Gibbon Drive and the intersection. Alberta's transportation has identified that this intersection will ultimately be closed due to its proximity to the interchange. When that happens, access to the site will only be available through the City of St. Albert's South Riel Area Structure Plan to the north. No sanitary sewer service currently exists to the proposed rezoning area, and there's no timeline for when downstream sewer service will be made available. No storm servicing currently exists to the proposed zoning area, and there's no storm sewer available in the vicinity. There's an existing water main located adjacent to the site on 137th Avenue, which is currently being utilized to service the site. All other comments from affected city departments and utility agencies have been addressed. Advance notice was sent to surrounding property owners and 2 community leagues. No responses were received. In summary, administration does not support this application because it is premature in the context of St. Albert's pending annexation of this area. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moulton. First up, we're going to hear from J. Robert Van Bruggen.
Thank you very much, Your Honor, and thank you, City Council. Thank you for all that you do for this city. I represent my family and our family business, Barricades and Signs Limited. We provide protection and safety in traffic work zones and make traffic signs. We've worked on Henday, Whitemud, Yellowhead, and on every arterial road in Edmonton. Most importantly, I represent the 40 employees of our company who, with their families, live in the city of Edmonton. Edmonton has been my city for over 60 years. I own the subject property. Presently, we work from a barn and several outbuildings on our family farm, which we have now outgrown. We purchased the property on 137th Avenue for better access for our employees and for our 926 customers who cumulatively drive many miles to come to our services, to our business. we purchased this property last year, understanding that all the land surrounding it has already been rezoned as IM or industrial type zoning to allow for businesses, including the land north of us, which is in St. Albert, north of 137th Avenue in the city of St. Albert, which is presently being developed and already occupied in some instances by warehouses. And this is part of the South Riel Industrial Park. If we were asking for conflicting rezoning, such as a high-rise or apartment or residential condo project, I would understand that there would be opposition, but I do not understand the lack of support for this use, which is 100% compatible with everything that is being planned around us. It's obvious to me that one day this property will be rezoned. I am exactly what we're asking for. Delaying it has become a financial hardship for us, and increasingly so. I would like to comment on the intersection and the proposal or the suggestion that intersection on 137th might be changed. I don't believe that can happen because it's also in the westward direction. That intersection is the only access into that whole residential neighborhood across Ray Gibbon Drive. So I don't think that's even a possibility to close that intersection. And if for some reason it was, and there was another intersection made for those residents over there, we would still have access through the some other way. I mean, there has to be an accommodation made for that. In keeping with the collaborative economic development strategy that Edmonton has entered into with the municipalities in Edmonton area and region, I hope that City Council gives careful consideration and allows this rezoning to take place. I do thank you for this opportunity to speak. I gained a new appreciation for what council does. You're wonderful. Thank you for this. It's been a long day and a half, but I've learned a lot, and I'm grateful that I think everybody in Edmonton should have the opportunity to sit through some of your council meetings. It's been a great education for me. Thank you.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. Thank you for your patience. Next up, questions for Mr. Van Bruggen. Councillor Knack, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Van Bruggen. Just the only question I have, because most of my questions are going to be focused on administration and the recommendation of non-support and really talking about what St. Albert has said. But just on that last point around the road, I did want to, and I'll turn this into a question. The province actually has been very clear they are going to close that intersection. We as a city have been able to get them to hold off. That was supposed to get closed this year as part of the widening of Ray Gibbon Drive. They are holding off. So with that in mind, I just want to ask this question: is that when that does close, because they have already stated it's not up to us, it's up to them for that road, you're still comfortable, so you would still be comfortable with proceeding with your rezoning application, even knowing that intersection will ultimately be closed?
Yeah, I have no objection to any of the plans that are being proposed. I don't even object to St. Albert eventually being the people who get my tax money.
Good. I wanted to make that clear, since I know I have been shared, that information has been publicly shared, that intersection will close. So
absolutely no problem with any of that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Those are all my questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I see no further questions for Mr. Van Bruggen. So next we're going to hear from Janice Agrios.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. As you can see, this parcel is very small. It's only 2 acres. The larger parcel to the east and south within the city, it is zone DC. And that DC is basically an IM zone with the additional use of RV storage. To the north, you have the St. Albert Riel ASP area. It's actually being zoned now, so it's now zoned commercial industrial service. And so there's approximately 100 acres of commercial industrial land in this plan area. The St. Albert CIS zone allows way more uses than the proposed IM zone does. And the Van Bruggen's proposed use, which is to manufacture signs and barricades, it's an allowable use in the St. Albert CIS district. So what the Van Bruggens are proposing is compatible with all surrounding land uses in Edmonton and St. Albert. And in essence, what you have is a large area, so over 100 acres. It's all zoned industrial commercial. And in the middle of it, you've got the Van Bruggen's small 2-acre parcel that's still zoned for agriculture. So from a planning perspective, this application is a complete non-issue. It fits in and is compatible with all surrounding land uses. And in the normal course, this would be a very straightforward application. The only issue on this application is the objection from St. Albert. And the reason for their objection is their pending annexation. Now, St. Albert served its notice of intent to annex back in January of 2016. So here we are over 5 years later, and St. Albert still has not submitted their formal annexation application to the Municipal Government Board. All they've done is amended the notice of intent. And according to the materials on St. Albert's website, they expect that they will be able to finally submit their application, and they say in late 2021. And so what this means is the earliest that St. Albert's annexation will be effective is January 2023. And if there's any further delay in St. Albert submitting its application, or if landowners contest, so there has to be a hearing, you could be looking into 2024 for an effective date. St. Albert does acknowledge that the proposed use by the Van Bruggens is compatible with its adjacent industrial lands, and it's also compatible with its intended use for these lands. So St. Albert does not have a planning reason for its opposition. Essentially, what St. Albert is asking is to freeze development on this small 2-acre parcel for at least another 20 months. And that is even though all of the land around it is zoned for industrial and commercial. And even though St. Albert has lands immediately to the north that are under active development. And if you've been up to the area, you can see that there are already a few warehouses that have been built or are under construction. So to St. Albert, what happens with this 2-acre site is hardly a big deal. It's insignificant in the big picture, and it won't make any difference to St. Albert's annexation. In contrast to the Van Bruggens and their employees, this is a huge deal. To them, the consequences of not being able to proceed with their development and not being able to relocate their business to this site are financially devastating. And so we're asking that council consider approving this application. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Agrios. Questions on that, Mr. Nick? No? Okay.
No, my questions are going to be for admin at this point. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Henderson, question?
Yeah, just one question, because one of the things that's in the report, and I sort of get this concern, is around the levies, because obviously when the land is properly developed, it's, there's going to have to be a change to the road. Clearly you're going to have to get proper drainage in there. You're going to have to get proper sewer in there. The only thing that really is servicing right now is water, and that's going to have to be paid for somehow in the larger development of the plan. And how that gets addressed for this property, I think, is one of the. So your thoughts on that, and how because I think that is a legitimate concern that that somehow or other this property won't necessarily have to pony up for that bit of development.
Yeah, sure. And there's a few comments. So firstly, this is a 2-acre site, so it's not going to be further subdivided. So the odds of there ever being levies being able to be taken from these lands are slim to none. And that doesn't matter whether these lands are in Edmonton or St. Albert. There likely aren't going to be off-site levies. If there were to be off-site levies from this site, 2 acres, we're talking about a very small amount, especially in the context of the larger area. Having said that, if it really is a concern, that is something that can be dealt with in the context of the annexation agreement. So if that is really a big deal to St. Albert, getting off-site levies that may never happen from this 2-acre site, there can be an agreement dealt with in the annexation agreement. It's quite common to deal with taxes, deal with levies and annexation agreements. And so the city of Edmonton, if it's concerned about preserving that for St. Albert, it has a mechanism to do so.
Yeah, it's because I think, and I don't understand enough about this, but ultimately, if this was going to be part of a larger development, every landowner at some point would either participate or not participate. And in order, I would presume, to tie into services, they would have to participate. So it's that piece of the puzzle that I'm just trying to think through.
Yeah, when they tie in, presumably they'll pay some sort of a connection fee. And once services are extended, again, that's dealt with by way of a development agreement. So there will be a point in time, whether this is in Edmonton or in St. Albert, that this development will have to connect and they will have to pay those costs. But if you're talking specifically about off-site levies, again, those can be dealt with in an annexation agreement and are commonly dealt with in annexation agreements.
Okay, great. I just wanted to give you a chance to respond to that question. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
No further questions for Ms. Agrios at this time. Was Jan van Bruggen able to join us?
No, he won't be. He is not able to join today.
Okay, but I did see Nick Golden join the call. I think.
Hello, I did.
Yes, go ahead.
Is it my turn to speak?
It is.
Thank you. I'm Nicholas Golden. I'm a long-term resident of St. Albert. Moved here in 1979. And I work for Remax Professionals. I was the agent who represented Jan and the previous owner, the Badetches, to purchase the 2 acres in question. I also was the realtor who represented Her Majesty the Queen, the provincial government, and Alan Fertag, who purchased the 32 acres to the east and south of Mr. Van Bruggen's purchase, the 2 acres in question. So I have a very long history of this property, quite a long history with selling land and developed land in and around St. Albert and Edmonton. I've been with Remax for 32 years, all with the St. Albert branch. So I held Alan's hand when he went through the same process to get the 32 acres rezoned. And we definitely did not think that the city of Edmonton was going to oppose the small 2-acre parcel, with knowing that it was located within an industrial area that was being currently developed to the north from the city of St. Albert, and currently was rezoned by the current landowner to the east and south. So I'm here today to speak about the application of rezoning this small parcel. I'm totally in favor of it. It will fit right into everything that's happening in and around the property. As I talked about, the larger site was rezoned. In 2016, the city of Edmonton approved for Alan to actually subdivide his rezoned land into 3 lots and provide a stormwater facility as required. As the city may or may not know, this is a process that has taken Alan almost 6 years to get to, and it's not an easy process, obviously. In 2017, bylaw 18120 rezoned the site to the same DC2, and they simply added a PU zoning to the stormwater facility that Mr. Fertag is to be making to get his development 100% approved. St. Albert opposed the rezoning back then as well, and they did not attend the meeting. They never had anything to say. They just said they were opposing it. Back in the day, they were talking about intermunicipality handshake deal where when there was land that was bordering two municipalities where there was obviously it's none of St. Albert's business what Edmonton does and vice versa, but when the land is on the property line of the two municipalities, there's a gentleman's agreement that we're going to try to work together no matter what to make sure that at least complements both areas. In 2017, the administration opposed the rezoning of the land to the east and the south of the Van Bruggen property, but the council approved it based on good land use and planning principles. I believe somebody earlier said we're not trying to rezone it to something that's not compatible to the neighborhood. Council recognized back then that it was an excellent industrial development opportunity, supported it over the recommendations from the administration, changing that land from agricultural and getting it developed is going to bring obviously a bigger tax dollar to the city versus the agricultural zoning on that. So today we have the rezoning of the smaller site. Your administration, I'm told, opposes this bylaw 19645, not on the land use planning reasons, but only because St. Albert is opposed, and they have started the process to annex this site into St. Albert. This process could take years to see the results. Just a small note, this is the same struggle that Alan had with the land to the east and the south.
I'm sorry, Mr. Golden, we're at the end of the 5 minutes there. We'll have to.
Sorry, I'm out of time?
Yes, I'm afraid so.
Oh, okay, well, thank you, Council, for taking my call, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
You're welcome. Questions for Mr. Golden? Not seeing any. Thanks for those comments, sir. Those are all the speakers we have registered. So let's turn to questions of administration. Councillor Knack, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I understand why administration would have put in a recommendation of non-support. That happened in the case for the other application, so I have no problem with that. But similar to the last time, I want to dig into whether this is something council should advance. So the biggest question is the one that Councillor Henderson was asking related to Ms. Agrios, because unlike the one a number of years ago, we are actually at a bit of a point where this is finally occurring, this conversation around the annexation. So I do want to ask about the offsite levy piece and if there's something that can be done through that annexation process that would allow that to be addressed, because I think that's a valid concern raised by St. Albert. Everything else sounds like they would essentially support it because the proposed use is aligned with what they're doing.
Thank you, Councillor. It's a good question. In terms of the agreement, Ms. Agrios was correct that the notice of intent has been issued. That was issued in March, that they are looking to annex this piece of land. The non-support from St. Albert, your summary is also correct that the land use is compatible with the northern zone that is in with their area. So the piece about the levies, I guess just for clarification, that once levies are put on a site by any municipality, they can't be put on again, which is where the contention is centered around St. Albert's objection, is that if we end up charging levies to this property, then St. Albert won't be able to charge their levies in order to fully service that site. And right now, where we stand is that it is technically and cost prohibitive to service the site to an urban standard from the city of Edmonton. So the likelihood of levies being put on by us is probably going to be quite large, and any development that's not temporary is probably going to be not feasible here. And just in terms of clarification, the proposed use and intent of the applicant is for that temporary storage, which wouldn't trigger any of those fees because of the type and intensity of development.
Yes. So and Mr. Johnson, you can jump in if I'm straying down the wrong path, but because levies was raised as a concern, I feel that's a valid thing I can be asking about now.
It is, Councillor. Yeah.
Okay. So recognizing that, are we, let's assume this goes through and then they wanted to advance what they're planning on advancing, would we have the right, even if it wasn't temporary, to not take the levies? Could we make that choice as a city, recognizing this annexation process has already started? We're down that path?
So I guess there's a number of hypotheticals in that question. One is we don't necessarily know what that sort of end use or that higher grade use is. So it would be hard to determine that. And our typical standard and processes is, development pays for development. And if we don't charge those levies, then I'm not sure how we would end up servicing this land if it were to remain in the city.
Maybe I'll ask it this way. Are we forced to take levies if they were to apply for something that was more permanent, or do city staff have the ability to exercise discretion, recognizing that there has been an application and this has been the one particular flag that has been raised? And I think a number of Johnson. Sorry, I saw Mr. Johnson unmuted, so I don't know if I strayed too far down the path.
No, I was going to seek to try and assist with the answer, but I'll let Mr. Pollock go first, and then if I can assist, I'm happy to.
Okay.
I think the concern there would be if there were development were to proceed that would require those levies, and we waived that ability at that time, and development was granted, there would be no recourse if this site were to be annexed into St. Albert to then charge those levies because the development had already been approved.
Yeah, thank you. I'm with Mr. Pollock on that. The trigger is your permits being issued. And so once that point in time has left, that train's left the station. Recognizing there is still, as Ms. Agrios talked about, likely potential for municipality in the future when a developer wants to connect to the services, to then at that point there can be an assessment of levies as well before they can allow connection because they control that infrastructure. So there is a few touch points. Also to Ms. Agrios' point, yeah, if levies are corrected by the city, there is the potential to put a negotiated provision into an annexation agreement where we would turn those funds over if it works for their purposes, of course.
That's very helpful context. Thank you. I'm out of time.
Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, my apologies if I overlap a little bit. My modem went out there for a minute, so I missed the beginning of Councillor Knack's questioning. Take St. Albert aside at this point. If it wasn't St. Albert, if this was just us, what would we still have the same concerns?
So the majority of our concerns lie in the feasibility of servicing this land to an urban standard. In terms of compatibility right now, the use is compatible with the surrounding land use. It's just whether or not we can get that full urban standard out of it, which comes into our recommendation and those sort of macro regional concerns of efficiently tying in services to developable parcels.
So in the future, I mean, given it's a small parcel and we've already created that issue with the parcel to the south, I'm just wondering how, I remember this debate from before, and obviously council made the decision it made then, but in terms, the concern is we commit to something that will be harder to service in the future, because one way or the other, I mean, that's going to be the landowner's choice at such time as servicing becomes available. I don't think there would be any intention in us pushing servicing through for this, and no need to do that. We're not obligated, I don't think, are we?
No, yeah, I think that the concern is, I guess if this land were to stay within the city of Edmonton, is that due to the cost prohibitive nature of servicing this site, that it would essentially be a low-grade industrial parcel forever.
But that's the landowner's lookout, I would think, is it not? And that condition exists today.
Correct.
So is there a chance in doing this? I suppose this is the question, that we make it more problematic and more expensive for St. Albert in the future. I mean, rezoning the property right now and not providing services, the property can be rezoned again. There's no obligation to rezone either now or in the future from its current zoning, correct?
Correct.
So I'm just trying to understand the consequences of doing this for St. Albert. So whatever they do in their plan in the future, landowners would have to agree to participate and rezone in order to deal with that plan. And there's nothing that we're doing right now that will preclude that from happening, I'm guessing.
Correct.
If we were putting services in, it would be a different story. But really, all we're doing is allowing some land use that is not there right now, but not creating any expectation of service, correct?
Correct.
So if a plan came forward in the future, the landowner could decide to participate in that plan or not.
Correct.
And if they don't participate, they won't get services, presumably.
Presumably, yes.
Yeah. So I mean, we're actually really just creating a temporary use for the property by doing this that can ultimately be addressed. I mean, I'm just trying to just doing a double check on what the downside is for St. Albert. We might be creating a use that will make it less likely for the landowner to choose to participate in the future. That's the risk, is it?
Yeah, I think that would be the consideration.
Okay. All right, thanks. That helps.
Any other questions for administration about new information? Mr. Van Bruggen or Ms. Agrios?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, I did have just 2 points that I wish to address. Firstly, in response to Councillor Knack's question regarding the annexation, there was a reference to the annexation. The response, there was a reference to the annexation is occurring. And to be clear, St. Albert still has not submitted an application. According to St. Albert, the earliest their application will go in is late this year. Mr. Pollock referred to a notice of intent in March of this year. That's an amendment to the notice of intent that was served over 5 years ago. So this has been outstanding for 5 years and nothing has been happening. Councillor Henderson asked a question, if it was just us, would there be any concerns? And Mr. Pollock indicated that there would be concerns about servicing. But back in October 2015, when the larger site was rezoned, administration had no concerns about servicing. Administration supported the application on the DC site to the south and east. They were fine with the servicing. And to be clear, these sites have all services except for sanitary right now. And at the time, administration supported, this is for the larger DC site, administration supported on-site sanitary until piped-in sanitary could be brought in at the owner's expense. So if it was just us, I think that's more than just a hypothetical. When it was just us, administration had no concerns and supported the application and didn't have concerns about servicing at that time. That was all I had to say by way of new information. Be happy to answer any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions arising from the new information? Not seeing any. Any other new information from any of the other speakers? Not hearing any. Councillor.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, hearing no other new information, I'll move closure of the public hearing.
Thank you.
Second.
Councillor Nichol. Okay, please vote to close public hearing.
Yes, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Councillor Katarina.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor
Yes.
Cartmell. Thank you, Councillor Zadek. We're just missing Councillor Hamilton.
Yes, it didn't pop up for me. Thanks.
Thank you. And Councillor Paquette.
Yes.
It's not coming up for me either. I don't know why you shouldn't have my vote because I didn't vote.
Okay, we do have your vote, but if you'd like to
That's
confirm it
concerning
verbally.
because it never popped up for me. So I'm a yes, but
Do you want me to do a roll call?
I'm puzzled as to how I voted.
That is odd.
Mr. Chair, I believe that was an error on our end.
Okay.
I think it was only an issue with Councillor Henderson, so we do have 11 votes.
Okay. If you're satisfied, I'm satisfied. Display the vote. And that's carried. And that's just to close public hearing. If we're having voting issues for the bylaws themselves, I'll roll call, but let's try it one more time and see if the cobwebs are out of the e-scribe here. So Councillor, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move first reading of item 3.24.
Second.
Do you want to speak to it?
Yeah, briefly, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and again, I just think it's probably worth speaking to it since the admin recommendation was non-support. And again, as I stated at the beginning of my questions, completely understand why administration would recommend non-support. I think that was a very valid recommendation to come to, so I don't fault anyone for that. Based off the commentary from St. Albert, what I've heard today is that, and then we saw it in the report, the land use being proposed falls in line. They had no objection to that. The concerns specifically related to the item around levies. And I'm satisfied based off what I've heard for answers that there's a way to ensure that we're not going to, essentially leave St. Albert short in any of this. That would not be fair to them. And if that was the case, that would be cause for me to not support this application. But that is not what I've heard. I think there are mechanisms for us to deal with that. So regardless of the fact that we might be a little bit closer to the annexation process formally getting underway, I don't see any reason to hold up this particular application. If it was completely counter their uses would be in the future, or we would short them, that would be a reason to not support. But I think it's well worth supporting this now. So encourage council to support it.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Seeing none, please vote on first reading.
Yes, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Councillor Katarina. If we can just have a moment to get the vote circulating. We're missing a few votes. Councillor Zadig?
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Esslinger?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson?
Yes, I'll reload my machine because it's just not coming out for me, which is unusual. Okay, thank you. I'm a yes, though.
Thank you.
Display the vote.
Apologies. Councillor Paquette?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
I thought it went through.
Councillor Walters?
It says I voted, but I am voting yes.
Thank you. I think our system may be glitching in the room here. Mr. Mayor, we're just missing your vote and then we're good to go.
Oh, I voted too. So I'm a yes. Display the vote then if you've got them all. And that's carried. I'm just going to roll call the rest of the votes. Just to be on the safe side. Move second reading, please.
Yes, please. I'll move that, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
On second reading, Councillor Banga. Was he able to join us? No?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Councillor Cartmel?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Katarina?
Yes.
Councillor Zadig?
Yes.
Councillor Esslinger?
Yes.
Councillor Hamilton?
Yes.
Councillor Henderson,
Yes.
Councillor Knack,
Yes.
Councillor McKean. Right. Michael,
Yes.
Councillor Paquette,
Yes.
Councillor Walters,
Yes.
and I vote yay verily. So that's carried unanimously. Want to move consideration, Councillor Knack?
Yes, I do. I'll move that, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
To allow third reading to proceed. Councillor Cartmel,
Yes.
Councillor Caterina,
Yes.
Councillor Zadek,
Yes.
Councillor Essinger,
Yes.
Councillor Hamilton,
Yes.
Councillor Henderson,
Yes.
Councillor Knack,
Yes.
Councillor McKean. I'm missing an action on the medical, sorry.
Yes.
Paquette
Yes.
and Councillor Walters.
We.
I am in the affirmative as well. Third reading, so that carries.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'll move third and final reading of Charter Bylaw 19645.
Second.
Thank you. Councillor Carmel,
Yes.
Councillor Caterina,
Yes.
Councillor Zadek,
Yes.
Councillor Essinger,
Yes.
Councillor Hamilton,
Yes.
Councillor Henderson,
Yes.
Councillor Knack,
Yes.
Councillor Nicol,
Yes.
Councillor Paquette,
Yes.
Councillor Walters.
Aye.
Aye, indeed. Okay, third reading is carried unanimously. Unless there are any subsequent motions arising from anything we've done so far, then we have concluded what we can do today because all the other three items have been made time specific for next week. Again, to anyone who is listening in, we've made Holyrood time specific for 1:30 p.m. next Tuesday, the 11th, and we have made the Garneau items first and second at 9:30 a.m. On the 14th. So they'll be back to back, and we will get to them that day.
And Mr. Mayor, just for your awareness, we will send an email to all remaining speakers summarizing that as well, just so that it's very clearly communicated as promised.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. We are in recess until, for purposes of this meeting, until 1:30 p.m. next Tuesday.